Okay, so today's lesson is on plate boundaries. It's a continuation of what we were looking at before and what you had done with the stations. So for today's notes, you're actually going to do a table instead of Cornell notes. Also, this video is going to be separated into two different sections. The first section looking at divergent and transform plate boundaries, and the second section looking at convergent plate boundaries and the ring of fire. As we go through this video, you should find the information needed to fill in each of these boxes, okay? So the first one that we're looking at, well, we'll just do a quick review though of what all the three types of plate boundaries are. So remember that first type of plate boundary is when the crusts are coming together. So the tectonic plates are moving together, and that is converging. So converging can happen between continental crust, oceanic crust, or continental and oceanic crust. If we have continental and oceanic, remember that oceanic crust is denser and heavier than the continental crust, and it's going to go underneath in subduction. Divergent is the second type. That's where they're separating apart. And transform is where they're going against each other in opposite directions. There's a few interesting things that you might want to remember. Convergent destroys crust, so we're losing crust. Divergent plate boundaries create new crust, and transform boundaries don't create or destroy. They just move, that's all. So the first one that you're going to write down in your table of notes is the divergent plate boundaries. So you'll notice at the top, we've got the pencil to indicate that you need to write this down, as well as the little picture to remind you that divergent is moving apart. Okay. When this happens in the ocean, we call it a mid-ocean ridge. So if we have two oceanic crusts that are separating, we call that the mid-ocean ridges, and it's usually a set of mountains underneath the ocean. That being said, they are a set of mountains where new crust is being created. It also goes by the name of seafloor spreading, because what's happening is the ocean floor or the seafloor is spreading apart slowly by only about 2 centimeters each year, really. It's very little, okay? And they're getting further and further apart. One of the places that we can actually see the seafloor spreading above ground or not super deep underneath the water is in Iceland, where the North American plates and the Eurasian plates are currently separating apart, creating new crust in between each of them. Okay, so once again, new crust is created. Divergent boundaries can also happen on land. So we can have continental crust that's diverging or oceanic crust that's diverging. And when it happens on land, we have a slightly different name for it. So we call it a rift valley. Okay, and the Rift Valley, the most famous one is in Africa. I believe it is around Ethiopia, although I can't tell you 100%. But there is one near the Red Sea, which would lead me to believe that it is that same region. This happens, so a rift valley happens when two continental crusts diverge. So remember, mid-ocean ridge if it's oceanic crust diverging, rift valley if it's continental crust. Again, new crust is created, and an example of this is the Great Rift Valley in Africa. Okay, eventually over time, it will fill in with water. That's just what happens. The areas, especially because they tend to be lower than sea level, will get covered up. So the second type of boundary, I'm actually going to stop the video here, and we'll do transform and convergent in the next video.